When you don't have much space to grow, every flower has to earn its keep to be able to find a place in your garden so that it'll be both beautiful and productive. But the good news is, with a bit of planning, even the smallest patch can look great all season long. In this video, I'm sharing how you can put together a planting plan for a 4 metre by 1 metre bed that will keep you in cut flowers for the season, so spring through till autumn. It's not about cramming everything in, it's about choosing the right things so that they will keep producing flowers for you over a longer period of time. So whether you've got a small garden or just a few pots, this video's for you. Most of my beds here are 4 metres by 1 metre, probably 1 metre 20 actually, but we're looking at that space. So from this end here through to here. So that's 4 metres. It's not an unreasonable amount of garden bed in a normal garden. If you can monopolise that with your cut flowers, you will have a spectacular display in your garden, as we have now, and plenty of flowers for your house. The intention would be you want a vase of flowers each week. That's it, nothing more than that. You haven't got enough space and variety that you can fit in for much more than that. And the way I like to think about it is seasonally. If you kind of consider it a metre per season. We're not talking about the traditional seasons here, we're talking about the growing seasons. So you have spring, early summer, midsummer and late summer. So that's 4, and if we kind of consider them to be 1 metre each for each season, and those flowers will cater for that. And whether you choose to section off in that 1 metre space is really up to you. But if we can consider it like that, we can then work out realistically what space we have to play with. And then you can, in the reality of growing a garden, you can intersperse things, because you can then mix in perennials and bulbs and things which can go throughout the bed. So whilst this bed only contains some flowers that you can grow, there are many more in the garden that I'll use as an example that I would grow for a cut flower bed and a flower bed for your garden in what is kind of a small space. What you do need to consider is you want the most productive flowers that you can have in that space. So we're looking at cut and come again flowers. So things like these zinnias, the more you cut them, the more flowers they produce. So early in the season when they're just getting going, they look as if this isn't going to work. But once they get going, so this is about their 3rd week of flowering, and I have been cutting them each week and more come. So we're looking at cut and come again, wherever possible. A few perennials to make life easier, and bulbs to make life easier. So once you've got you recognise the necessity to have cut and come again or highly productive flowers, then you then need to think about your colour palette. Now, I would not say in any stretch of the imagination that the colour palettes that I have got going on in this garden are massively cohesive. And that's because my intention for this garden this year was dried flowers. So yes, they needed to blend together, but the colours change when they dry, and therefore you can get away with a bit more. If you're only in a small space and you only have a few flowers that are going to be flowering at any one time. You do want them all to work well together. So whatever you choose as your cut and come again, they do need to have a significant number of colour choices available. You can pick the colours that you want and blend them in to your colour-scape of your garden. So we're thinking seasonally, and as I say, we've got 4 sections for each season. So spring, I would be looking at tulips. So let's say this is spring. I keep saying tulips, I mean bulbs. Daffodils tend to be sooner, the first harvestable bulb there is. But we're not limited to daffodils, but it depends how much you want, how varied and how much money you want to spend on these things, because some of them just don't come back each year. Tulips, whilst I absolutely adore tulips, a lot of the varieties that are lovely are single season varieties. So once they're flowered, they won't come back. So I would be inclined to pick I think they're termed perennial tulips, and I have had some and they have flowered for at least 5, if not more years, and created more flowers as they've come. But you are limited to what those are. But anything you choose for spring, the colour scheme can be whatever you want, because it's unlikely that the flower, unlikely is not possible, that the flowers that you choose for your midsummer to late summer flowers will not have any relation to spring, because they just won't be flowering at the same time. So you don't need to worry about that. So you can choose different colours each season, but some of the flowers I'm going to suggest will meld into different seasons. So you've got a little bit of overlapping, and so again, those colours would need to work together. So I would say consider a metre squared worth of bulbs. So tulips, daffodils, going on to alliums. So they can be whatever. You can get, if you're doing cut flowers, you can get an awful lot of bulbs in one bed for cut flowers. You can really pack them in tightly. But if you're wanting them to be used for a bit more longevity, especially daffodils, then giving them a bit of space to grow would be preferred. And also that means you can then plant other things in between easier. If you were a flower farmer, you really do plant the bulbs butting up to each other, but then you really can't get much else into it. So a bit of extra space does help. Planting annuals into them, that's actually easier. But if you wanted something a bit more long-lived, such as a perennial in there, then they will take up a bit of space. So this area, let's consider that our bulbs. I've got no examples to show you, but that's our bulb area. They will be flowering from potentially April to the end of May. So maybe 50 or so bulbs. You maybe won't get them one vase a week. You maybe have them in groups when they're ready and flowering. You may find that all the tulips flower together. Who knows? Spring is a little bit of an iffy season in the flower world, unless you're really focused on it. So we have space for them, but it's not going to be our main thing. So I would also have, as a bulb, alliums. They come in early June, late May, early June. So they are a good way to spread, and then once they've gone, they die back. But they'll come back each year. So we have longevity in that. And they are a great focal flower in your arrangement when they're done. And also their dried heads are good. So there is a bit of interest there for quite a few seasons. Let's move on to the next section. For early summer, I would have the alliums, as we've mentioned. I would have Sweet William, which is a biennial, which would have needed to been planted the year before. So that would have been growing up, and so it could be growing up through your bulbs, is what I was kind of thinking of that in there. But let's focus on here. So we've got some Sweet Williams. it is the end of July now, and I still have some Sweet Williams flowering in pots by my front door. So they do last a long time. They are a great flower, cut flower. They don't dry great, but the heads can be big enough for focal flowers or small enough for filler flowers. So they're a good flower to have in the garden, come in a massive variety of colours. I would be inclined to get a specific flower seed variety that you want when you're growing in a small space, because getting a mix will mean that you don't know what you're getting. And I have had last year with my Sweet Williams, they were all scarlet. So it was a mixed pack of seeds, but virtually every single one was scarlet. And scarlet is quite a difficult colour to blend in with everything else, whereas the more velvety purples and pinks could have worked quite easily, and actually is what I've got this year. But the scarlets were a bit not really that useful. So buy a variety that you want when you're doing it in a small space, but they will grow a flower for a long time, so they are cut and come again, but they do have an end to their season. So end of July, I am really getting to the end of those flowers now, really. But that's a long season of flowering. 2 months I've had them flowering. So that's pretty good going. Also, in early summer, I would have larkspur. So my larkspur bed is over there. I still have a few flowers, if you can see the blue. I still have a few flowers. They produce more flowers than I was anticipating. This is my first year of being successfully growing them. I sowed them in on New Year's Day, and they flowered from mid-June, and probably they really need to come out. They could have come out last week before. So mid-June, mid-July. So you've got a month's worth of flowers there. And they produce a lot of stems. So again, they have a finite life, but whilst they're flowering, they're good. And I used probably 3 metres for about 30 plants. So 1 metre would be about 10 plants. But actually, 10 plants is quite a lot. So you don't really need to fill this space with the larkspur, although you could. You could have your Sweet Williams in here, which would be, your tulips would have gone by the time the Sweet Williams are flowering, and you could have your alliums and larkspur in here. And then what I would also have is a geum plant, which I've got over there. That has been flowering for me since March, I think. So that could be add a pop of colour in with your bulbs. It can be pops of colour in with your early summer. It's a really fantastic plant. Mine's bright orange, which is why I'm calling it pops, but you can probably get some more subtler colours. But it's a fantastic perennial, and it's not that big a plant. So again, you could have a little spot for it in the garden as your fancy flower in your arrangement, and there's something that has been flowering consistently from March. So an arrangement of alliums, larkspur, geum, and then I would have this is where things start coming in and going. So feverfew is a good plant to have. I'd only have one. This whole thing here is one plant that only grew this year. It must have self-seeded last year, but it grew this year. It's been a good year for feverfew this year. But that is a good filler plant. You are limited to daisy-like flowers, but that is a good filler. You can cut it back. Once it produces many flowering stems, cut it back and it will come back again later in the autumn or later in the summer. I would have, actually, the perennial Achillea, which is a different version of this flower. This is about 5 or 6 plants of yarrow. This is massive, much bigger than I thought it was going to be, and much more delicate, and will blend. You can, again, comes in lots of colours, so you can blend it in really quite well with whatever colour situation you have going. So that's kind of an arrangement that you've got there for early summer. So a few larkspur for the spikes, fillers. You could have feverfew, but I would be more inclined to go for the Achillea, and as it's a perennial, it will keep coming back. Pops of colour would be GM and Sweet William. And that's a nice little arrangement that you could have going there. If we then move on into Midsummer, you might have some larkspur still going, but really that's where we are now, is Midsummer. So what you see now is what's available. So zinnias, I planted these quite early. This is the earliest they flower. Normally I would consider them to be a late summer, but I planted them early. We've had a warm summer, so they're doing pretty well. So I would have zinnias absolutely in the garden. These, I've got a whole heap of different zinnias. I wouldn't, if you wanted to go for delicate and subtle, I wouldn't go for these Oklahoma. These floret ones, which are a lovely, more pastel-y colour, they are a lovely flower. I would go for, in fact, this queen lime mix, which are kind of greens and reds, and they will then blend nicely with the Achilleas, and probably you could find a lovely dahlia that would go in with that later as well. So these, from now on, so we're now just about starting in mid-summer, these are what is going to be going forward for you. The Achillea is going, and I would then bring in, the larkspur is finishing. Snapdragons would be what I would bring in for a spike, absolutely. They take a long time to grow from seed, so I've got a feeling I sowed those on New Year's Day as well, and this is them starting to flower now, whereas the larkspur have been and gone. But they're another spike, so I would have Achillea, I would have the snapdragons, we've got the zinnias, the rounds. Foliage, I just kind of use, I wouldn't necessarily have space for foliage, although I have got some grasses in here, which is self-sown, in fairness. I can't take credit for that, but this is a variety called Sprinkles, I think, and it's a fountain, and actually it does look rather wonderful and dries really well. I would also bring in some nasturtiums, which really have a good vase life, which we've got down there. I actively planted them maybe 3 years ago, never planted them since, and they come back. They're not perennials, they just self-sow readily. We maybe start bringing the cosmos in. It's not been a great year for cosmos so far for me. I've not really had any flowers that are usable in the cut flowers, so I would say they're more late summer. So you've got a nice little variety here for midsummer. We have some beautiful scabiosa here that is in flower. So they can feed in, they're quite small, spindly plants, so you can slot things in. You don't need many of them just to add a little bit of variety. Given that you are going to be hoping to use the Achillea over several seasons, I would have, they do spread, or they do become a bigger plant as a perennial. I would maybe have 2 plants just to make sure that you've got enough to keep you going. And then you're moving into late summer, which, as we all know, in my world, it's dahlias. And there are so many to choose from. So expectations for dahlias, for me, where I am in the country, in the UK, is mid-August before you're going to get any flowers. But then they will keep flowering through till the first frost. So I have had buckets of flowers of dahlias in November. Perhaps not much else. The zinnias will probably go along with that. They will keep going till the frost. And that's it. Depending on what else, from foliage point of view, you could stick in a dill, which is a lovely lime green. I have those sprinkled around rather than having them in one particular patch. Cerinthe is a lovely glaucous, purpley blue leafed flower which readily self-seeds if it's in an environment it's happy. So I would have that, and then next year, hopefully, you don't need to think about it again. Same with the larkspur. I should really pull them up, but I'm kind of hopeful they'll self-seed there. So I'm leaving them in because I've got nothing to backfill. You can, of course, all of the colour in the background there is straw flowers. You can, of course, add in a straw flower for your garden. That will flower and keep on flowering until the frost. I think that would be it. That would give me enough flowers. If you've got calendula here, kind of will cover you through early summer, cut back, it'll come again in the midsummer, cut them, come again in the late summer. So this will keep going forever if you can get a colour that suits your colour scheme. This one here is lovely, it's a pale yellow, so blends in quite well. But more often than not, they are really an awful orange, which is maybe not what you want in your colour scheme. And what we also have here is self-sown nigella, which the seed pods look great in a fresh flower arrangement. Obviously they look great dried, and the flowers when they're in flower are lovely to add in. I would say that would be early summer. So within this bed, I mean, it's not perfect for what we've just been talking. I could have had the bulbs in. This could have been the Achillea, and this gap here could have had the larkspur in. We've got a dahlia in there, we've got some cosmos. If this is half the Achillea, then the other half would be snapdragons. The sweet williams would be merged in there. So I hope that has shown you that you don't really need a massive amount of space to fulfil your cut flower garden dreams. If you can change the way you think about gardens, then you could just set it up like that. You could add in a few more perennials such as peonies or roses to add to the longevity and not have to reproduce it over the week. But you know, you're not adding any winter interest in there by those plants. Most gardens don't have that much interest in winter, so you're not losing anything, but a cut flower garden certainly looks fabulous all summer long. So that's it, a full season of cut flowers from one small bed. It comes down to choosing the right plants that will keep on giving, that they will flower for a long period of time, allowing you to both cut the flowers and enjoy them in the bed itself. Careful selection will really help you in achieving your goal of having a vase of flowers on the table each week. And if you want more ideas or tips, then check out the link below. Subscribe to my free hub, which has a series of guides to help you grow flowers in small spaces or with little time, and the link's below. I hope this video has given you some inspiration that you can do it, whatever space you have. And until next time, happy gardening.